Hey, come see us live. We're doing our Rumble Time show September 27th in Los Angeles. We'll be in Tempe, Arizona, and we'll be in Burbank, California. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. Okay, we have our special guest on for today. Calley Means is a Stanford and Harvard Business School graduate who co-founded True Medicine, a company built around the idea that food and lifestyle habits like exercise and sleep is medicine. Sounds right-wing. The company's goal is to make tax-advantaged spending on healthy food and exercise seamless. In the upcoming book, Good Energy, there it is right there.
It's out.
It is out already, which he co-authored with his sister, Dr. Casey Means. He explores how cellular dysfunction driven by poor dietary choices fuels chronic health issues and offers actionable solutions. Please welcome to the show, Calley Means.
Great to see you, Jimmy.
Great to see you. Now, here's what it says at the, this is the teaser for the book at the beginning on the jacket. It says, what if depression, anxiety, infertility, insomnia, heart disease, erectile dysfunction, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, dementia, cancer, and many other health conditions that torture and shorten our lives actually have the same root cause? Our ability to prevent, first of all, what would that root cause be, Calley?
Well, right now, they're all treated as separate issues. If you have those conditions, you're seeing 9 different doctors having 9 different treatments. My co-author, my sister, Stanford Medical School, top of her class, and had to choose, like all doctors, one of 42 specialties. And, you know, Jimmy, we joke, you know, food, exercise, talking about these things, that sounds kind of simple, but that it's radical to the healthcare system. And every single condition you just listed, just clinically, is because of our food system, is because kids are so sedentary that 77% of 21-year-olds aren't eligible to join the military, or because of basic environmental factors, RFK and now President Trump, quite frankly, are talking about. These are actually very simple root causes, but there's a lot of profit and complexity, which me from a lobbying perspective, having worked for these industries as a lobbyist, my sister as a doctor, are really working to unpack.
So I know that Alzheimer's wasn't even a thing until the late 70s, right? Like nobody had heard of Alzheimer's all of a sudden. And then a decade later, we start to have an explosion of autism. And right. Are those two things linked? And where did Alzheimer's come from?
There's headlines almost every week now, Jimmy, where it's a new disease and we're hitting an all-time high in 2024. Like this year in 2024 is the highest rate of cancer in world history, and particularly American history, is the highest rate of autism in American history, is the highest rate of autoimmune conditions in American history, is the highest rate of diabetes, of kidney disease, of heart disease, of everything. Everything is at an all-time high, particularly among kids this year, right now. And headline after headline announcing these stats, the New York Times recently said, cancer rates are exploding among kids. Nobody knows why. And you know, I think this is starting to break through. This is not a left-right issue. It's a corruption issue. I mean, what Casey and I talk about in the book, and we've come to from our different perspectives, is that there's a simple economic fact. It's not a conspiracy, just a fact that the medical system is the largest and fastest growing industry in the country. And it makes money when somebody gets sicker earlier on. And it makes money when disease is siloed. When a kid has high cholesterol and they get a statin. Statin rates have doubled in the past 5 years among high schoolers. A kid has high blood sugar, they get metformin. Metformin prescription rates have doubled among high schoolers in the last 10 years. When the kid's feeling a little sad, they get an antidepressant. Antidepressants are prescribed like candy among high schoolers. Now Ozempic is actually, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, the first line recommendation for a 12-year-old who's overweight. Not wait and see, not try diet. It's first line defense. So what we think what's happened is it's almost a spiritual problem when you get to it, is that our cells are crying out for help. And fundamentally what we have is mass cellular dysfunction, you know, caused by our food environment, our sedentary environment, our sleep. Kids are getting 2 hours less sleep than they did 100 years ago. By chronic stress, I mean, all kids have a phone, a weapon of mass destruction for chronic stress in their pocket. By basic, you know, societal forces. And instead of talking about the root cause, talking about what I believe is a genocide happening particularly among kids, but also adults, Life expectancy is plummeting right now in the United States. It's happened well before COVID. No, we lunge for siloed pills. And what we argue in this book, Jimmy, is it's been out for a couple months, and it's really resonating. Is the biggest lie in medicine is that it's complicated, and we've got to redefine medicine in terms of this corruption lens very quickly, or else we're going to be in big trouble.
Well, I've been reading a blog called the Midwestern Doctor, and the things that I've learned through that blog are kind of mind blowing. For instance, I went in to get some eczema on my face taken care of at a dermatology center of Pasadena. I don't know if that's the exact name, but it's something like that. And I had to wait 2 weeks for an appointment, and I was chagrined to find out I wouldn't be seeing a doctor. I was going to see a nurse. And then I read this article by the Midwestern Doctor that explained that in the 80s, dermatology was the lowest rung of the specialties and the lowest paid. They got together, the Dermatology Association got together with a Madison Avenue advertising firm, and they were told to conflate the kind of skin cancer, which is basal cell carcinoma, which is almost never deadly, and combine it with the kind that's almost always deadly, which is melanoma. So most of the people get basal cell. Most of the people don't get melanoma, which is the deadly kind. And they blamed it on the sun. Well, you do get basal cell from the sun, but you don't get the deadly kind. And so anyway, not that I'm a doctor. I'm just saying the things that I've learned. I learned that the Wall Street equity firms had taken over dermatology centers, and now they're putting and so that's why you don't get to see a doctor when you go, because it costs too much money to see a doctor. And that's why they push these Mohs surgeries to take off these basal cells, because you can double bill people. It's a big scam. And that was the first thing I learned. And I learned a lot of more things. And he's got some great things about the vaccine schedule and the COVID and the COVID vaccine. It is just mind-blowing to me that it's all driven by money. And now, when Bill Clinton was in 1998, he took the restrictions. It used to be against the law for big pharma to directly advertise to people on television. And they took that out. There's only 2 countries in the world that allow that: New Zealand and the United States. 2 countries that pushed the COVID narrative harder than anybody, and the big pharma COVID narrative. And so now our news industry is completely captured. So somewhere around 75% of the advertising revenue budgets for cable news comes from big pharma. And big pharma is also advertising in medical journals, which is why they're also corrupt. Like, the whole thing is corrupted. Am I wrong?
No, a lot to unpack there. But I think, so working for the pharma industry early in my career, it was a simple checklist. What institutions do Americans trust, and how do we funnel money to them? So, as you said, the pharma advertising to news channels was not seen as a consumer advertising line item. It was seen as a public affairs line item. It wasn't to pay off the news to influence consumers with those goofy ads. We knew the consumers were going to buy those drugs anyway. It was to get into the offices of the editors of the news and influence the news itself. That was very clearly, and this is 12 years ago, that was very clearly what the purpose of, because obviously, and Tucker's talked about this, Megyn Kelly's talked about this, people who have left the system talk about this very clearly. It's some direct censoring, but it's obviously just self-censoring. When somebody's paying 50 to 70% of your entire budget, paying for your mortgage, you're not going to criticize that. So what happens there? Then we get something like COVID. COVID, in my opinion, was a foodborne illness. COVID was a metabolic disease, dying of COVID, right? We died in the United States multiple times at a higher death rate per capita than people in Japan. Multiple times a higher death rate per capita than people in Europe. COVID was a wake-up call that our immune systems in America are under threat. Just as we have multiple higher diabetes rates and obesity rates than Europe and Japan, we died at a higher rate of COVID. So there could have been on the news an exploration of how we have epidemic diabetes rates, epidemic obesity rates. 80% of American adults are overweight or obese. Our bodies are crying out for help, right? 66% of American adults are pre-diabetic. This is unprecedented. And it's very tied to COVID. But there wasn't the news questioning our metabolic health and calling for Americans to harden up their immune system. It was all about a pharmaceutical intervention, which turned out to be very problematic. The biggest dynamic, though, Jimmy, that is really being co-opted, as you alluded to, though, is academic research itself. I mean, I'm been reported and I've been very close with RFK and doing whatever I can to help the Trump campaign, also meeting with Democrats. I mean, this is a bipartisan issue, but if you ask me for one policy that could transform American health, that could save us trillions of dollars, that would just ignite the human capital of our children, it's get corruption out of medical guidelines. Right now, 19 of the 20 USDA nutrition advisors are bought off. They're paid for. They're given money from the food or the farm industry. What does that get us? That gets us our nutrition guidelines saying that a 2-year-old, that 10% of their diet can be added sugar. 80% of NIH grants go to researchers with conflicts of interest. And the FDA, I think you were talking about this in the show, I mentioned with RFK that it was 50% bought off, and they issued a correction. It's 47%, and it's actually 75% of the FDA department that approves drugs is bought off. So if we just have the standards of care correct, instead of demonizing the sun, instead of literally you have the FDA demonizing non-ultra processed food, they're demonizing the wrong things. They're telling us that the savior's in a pill. We just need the medical guidelines correct. And I think we're going to be okay. People want to be healthy, but we're just getting the wrong guidelines from the top.
In fact, you make the point that Americans died at a higher rate than, say, Japan from COVID, and you say it has to do with our metabolic health. And so what would have actually been helpful is if you got out and exercised, if people got out and got sun, because sun is actually essential for your health. But they've made us afraid of the sun. And so, if you would eat healthy, make sure you have your vitamin D. But what happened was, if you did advocated those things, you were called a right winger. They literally they made health, nutrition, and exercise into some kind of alt-right kind of thing. It's amazing the control the big pharma has on the propaganda machine, which is corporate news. And that's the Washington Post, that's the New York Times, that's MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, all the rest of them, and NPR, by the way. They're just as horrible. Hey, guess what? Mortgage interest rates are dropping, and now in the low 5s. If you've been waiting to figure out how to get your finances in order, you need to call our friends over at American Financing today. A lot of us are carrying really high credit card balances that charge us 20% or more each and every month. It's time to get rid of those. American Financing's salary-based mortgage consultants, so they don't get a commission, they're salary-based. They are helping homeowners just like you tap into their home's equity to get out of high-interest debt. They're saving the average customer $800 a month by doing this. And with rates dropping, the decision is really easy. All it takes is a 10-minute, no-cost, no-obligation phone call to find out how much you can save. And if you start today, you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. Call American Financing today. That's 888-804-0303. That's 888-804-0303. Or visit AmericanFinancing.net/Jimmy. Hey, come see us live. We're doing our Rumble Time show September 27th in Los Angeles. We'll be in Tempe, Arizona, and we'll be in Burbank, California. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.